desire to be respected and included in their own care. I remember the first time that I learned about Plaintree and Angie. I actually read 3 paragraphs of an article that was in an industry journal that talked about the Plaintree model unit in San Francisco. And I shared it with my colleague, Lynn Wardell, who was the director of nursing at Griffin at the time. And just in 3 short paragraphs, we knew that there was something special going on in San Francisco. So we literally got on a plane and we went out to see what was happening in the Plaintree model unit. And we actually got an opportunity to tour that unit, and our tour guide was Laura Gilpin, who you just heard about. And Laura was a tremendous proponent of the work that was being done by Plaintree. As you know, Laura was a night nurse on that model unit. And she talked about the principles of access to information, and patient empowerment, and family involvement, and a healing environment. And she was pointing out all of the aspects of what we were looking at and how they related to those principles. And we saw the environment and we learned about the programs and policies that were the sort of underpinning of the approach that was being used there. Many of these you know about. There was a care partner program, and patient medication, self-administration, and a volunteer baking program that had that wonderful kitchen. And as Laura told the story, she told how the Plaintree model and that unit came to be, and of course she talked about Angie and her personal experience with a devastating illness, and then the following year, an experience with illness in her family. And she talked about how that experience motivated her, not only to advocate for a change in the way healthcare is delivered, but actually to create a model, to demonstrate how it can be done. But more than that, she went on to tell us, and this was going on at the model unit at the time, how to subject that model to rigorous scientific study so they can demonstrate that what was being done there really makes a difference. And those of you who met Laura know that she did that with great passion, and it was infectious, and we were sold. And we bought Plaintree, frankly in our heart, back to Connecticut, and that started our journey, which has now been going on more than 30 years. When Laura talked about Angie, she talked about her with great reverence. She described her as a pioneer. She talked about the fact that she was innovative and brilliant and tenacious. But just as important as those characteristics, she was kind and compassionate and spiritual. I learned that she was a lot more than that over time. She was that and much, much more. I heard the stories of Plaintree's founding, and I learned that Plaintree, although we talk about Angie's role, Angie was a great leader. She surrounded herself with brilliant people. It really took a village. She brought together a leading anthropologist and social scientist and psychologist and architects like Roz Lindheim, and they actually met for weekend retreats in the late 1970s to talk about how we can make changes in healthcare to be more responsive to the needs of patients. Now, I don't know about you, but in the late 1970s, I wasn't giving up my weekends to sit around to talk about changing the world. Right? Can I have help advancing the slides? So if you remember, 1978 was when Saturday Night Fever was released. That's what people were thinking about. They were thinking about themselves. They weren't thinking about, maybe the next slide, please. We don't want people to start to dance. The 70s were known as the me decade. It was really the 1960s where folks were really socially minded. In the 70s, people were thinking more about themselves and their own personal development, their own personal experiences. Angie wasn't doing that. She was thinking about others and how she can improve the experience, the healthcare experience, and how we can value individuals, and how could we reform a kind of a change allergic industry. It took a very special person to even think that that could be done. So the next slide. You know, Plaintree, I was looking at that model unit. Plaintree actually started as a library because those people who talked about a model and wanted to change it in the inpatient setting and approach the hospital where Angie had her experience, and the then CEO, sort of, the hospital just thought that that may have been too radical of a step. And this was a quote 7 years later, after the library was formed and the model unit was established. The then CEO said the project seemed to some to be an idea whose time hadn't come yet when it was presented 7 years ago. So that was in 1985. 7 years. Now most people, frankly, would have given up, but not Angie. Again, I said she was tenacious. Next slide. So I put 2 coins on Angie's, in front of Angie and Dick. And that's a Susan B. Anthony dollar there. And Susan B. Anthony was an abolitionist, and she was a social activist, and you know that she fought for women's right to vote. And in 1978, when Plaintree was founded, the Susan B. Anthony coin was minted. That's when it was introduced. They're hard to find now. I actually had to go on eBay to get those 2 coins to get them for Dick and Angie. And she worked an entire lifetime, and actually at the time of her death, the 19th Amendment hadn't been passed yet. Women had only got the right to vote in 3 states. But if you think about that, she fought for women, she fought for the end of slavery. Angie has fought for the rights of all patients, that's men and women in the United States and around the world. And I know she's taken by what she sees here this week and the fact that this work is continuing. And I told her tonight, she planted the seed, and all of us have cultivated that, and it continues to grow and bear fruit. Yeah. So, next slide. We thought it would be fitting that we actually establish our own coin. So, we've actually been having a conversation with the United States Mint about having an Angie Thieriot dollar. And I have to tell you, those conversations haven't gotten too far with the present administration, because I told the folks in the Mint who passed it along to the Mint administration that Angie is from California, which is a blue state, and she's from San Francisco, which is the bluest city in the blue state. And then when they saw the mock-up, they saw that she was looking left and not right, and I said, that was the end of it. So we're going to mint that ourselves. And while it won't be legal tender, right, it will be currency that you can use in the online Plaintree store anytime you want. You know, every movement through time has had a founder, a person who envisioned a better future, a better path forward, and who took action to change the world in some way. And Plaintree and the patient-centered care movement have Angie Thieriot. Please join me in honoring our founder, Angie Thieriot.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here and such a pleasure. And I just have 2 words I want to say to you. I'm not a public speaker. Dear friends, I'm not a public speaker. This is my first talk longer than 3 minutes in my whole life, my whole 7 years of life. And I'm doing it out of gratitude and respect for you. When I felt the irresistible compulsion to start Plaintree, I didn't know then the exact form it would take. I frequently told people what I was planning to do. They responded in various ways. Some were gently amused. It could be said, I could tell they were thinking she's lost her mind. Maybe it's an Argentine thing. Some people thought it was a great idea, and some people actually got angry. Who do you think you are? You're not a doctor or a health professional. This last group was the most helpful to me, because it was precisely the patient's point of view I felt was forgotten, and the one I wanted to bring back into the occasion. So much has happened since those early days, so much that is largely due to the creativity and talent of the people in this room, and those who came before. The patient's point of view, your point of view, and mine, and everyone when we end up in the hospital. Before we opened our first lab unit, Rosalind Hunt, a founding board member and professor of architecture at Berkeley, checked herself into Presbyterian Hospital in San Francisco for a couple of days to try to better understand that point of view. She said there was so much she never would have discovered otherwise. I hope we keep doing that sort of thing way into the future. Everything that you do, nursing, doctoring, managing, is an act of love. Looking after your fellow humans when they're vulnerable and in need, truly caring, being creative about how to provide the best environment, engaging people's minds and senses, healing their bodies and souls. My husband says, well, what do you mean by love? A good question. In the early days of Plaintree, what sustained me was the look in the eyes of nurses and relatives who had cared for me in moments of fear and pain. Now I experience it through my Parkinson. I've become aware of an immense wellspring of caring among humans. Perfect strangers are constantly helping me. I hear, I've got you, as an anonymous person in the street reaches out because he thinks I could fall. Kind smiles, concern. It blows my mind. I feel healed by it, spiritually and physically healed. So I know that all this is about love. And that love is, in large part, warming well-being and ease and freedom from pain for another human being. It's mysterious, but I have no doubt about it. We are the patients, not some abstract sector of society, but our parents, our spouses, our children. Very few people avoid spending the most difficult and traumatic moments of their lives in hospital. Before I wrap this up with my deepest message for you, I want to bring into the room those people without whom Plaintree would never have happened. First and foremost, I have to mention Ryan Thieriot. At the very beginning of Plaintree, I had been interviewing potential board members, looking for funding and trying to refine the concept. When Stuart Brand suggested that I look at Ryan as a possible person to help me get my project rolling, we met and started working together. It soon became the best working partnership of my life. I could not have done it without Ryan's energy, clarity, and vision. We went from sharing fury about being referred to condescendingly as you girls by hospital administrators, to weeping when we couldn't pay the staff at the end of the month, to hosting epic fundraisers. Ryan has gone on to great things, founding with her husband Stuart Brand, original board member of Plaintree, Revive and Restore, an organization bringing back extinct species, and Long Now, which encourages long-term thinking. Some of the founding board members who are no longer with us were instrumental in making Plaintree a respected organization. Dr. John Gamble, Chief of Medicine at CPMC, and one of the most admired doctors of his time. Roz Lindheim, an innovative professor of architecture at UC Berkeley, and beloved Laura Gilpin, our first nursing director, who created so many of our nursing programs. She told me that she became a nurse because she wanted to protect people while they slept. Victoria Fay, fortunately still very much alive, was instrumental in defining our aesthetic, one of warmth, simplicity, and comfort. There were many other amazing, talented, loving people who gave generously of their time and efforts. I wish I could mention them all. And as if to prove that the Plane Tree magic just got stronger and stronger, we have Susan Frampton to carry Plane Tree into the future. She is the most extraordinary leader, an embodiment of Plane Tree of the spirit and brilliance and wisdom of our project. I'm eternally grateful, Susan, that the Great Spirit brought you to Plane Tree. In the 40 years that I've been talking about Plane Tree, I've never been able to say this very clearly. I don't feel that it explains what I mean, but it's the best I can do. Hospitals are not organizations, or shouldn't be, like, say, governments, businesses, museums, or airlines. They're organic human institutions, more in line with families and marriages. They have existed since the first caveman laid his sick child in the warmest part of the cave. Their sole purpose is to heal and comfort. Although attention must be paid to sustaining the physical, we should never lose track of the real purpose, which is to comfort and heal. Mercy, empathy, that intangible wisdom that tells the caregiver when to laugh with the patient, or listen or caress a brow. These are the values we should focus on, not on how much money the hospital's taken in, affected by such issues as how many minutes a doctor or nurse spends with each patient. We have found in Plane Tree hospitals and independent studies corroborate that many aspects, such as views of nature, family participation, music and love in any form, will shorten patient stays and reduce costs. I fear the business orientation that some hospitals have taken recently will undo a lot of what we have achieved. Plane Tree must not let this happen. These are my parting words to you, the bearers of this wonderful legacy. So it's about love, guys. Creating an environment that supports and allows caregivers to express their humanity in all its kindness, generosity, and beauty. You are the angels of the earth.